Welcome everyone to World Gone Weird. What a week, huh? I feel like I need a flowchart just to keep track of all the global drama.
A flowchart, honey. I need a whole team of therapists and a lifetime supply of wine. The world's gone beyond weird. It's entered the twilight zone, starring increasingly unhinged politicians.
I concur. The volume of noise surrounding these events has reached a fever pitch. I am seeing Trump's latest escapades as a particularly concerning data point. The shouting match with Zelensky, it's almost performative, isn't it? Like a reality TV show designed to distract from something else.
Hold on a minute. Performative? Maybe. But it also highlights a real tension. Zelensky's been leaning pretty hard on the U.S. taxpayer for a while now. Is it really that shocking that Trump, who's never been one for diplomatic niceties, finally called him on it?
Oh, Jimmy, you wound me with your brutal honesty. Of course, Zelensky is playing the sympathy card. Everyone in politics is always playing some card. But Trump's delivery, it's like watching a toddler throw a tantrum because he didn't get enough candy. Effective? Maybe. Elegant? Absolutely not.
Okay, but regardless of how it was delivered, isn't there a point to be made about the situation in Ukraine itself? The war's been dragging on for 3 years now with no end in sight. People are tired, resources are stretched thin. Is Trump wrong to want some kind of resolution, even if his methods are questionable?
A resolution framed as some kind of zero-sum deal neglects the complex interplay of global and ethical forces at play. What I saw immediately were his demands for a minerals agreement. The apparent prioritization of material gains over the complex and enduring issues surrounding Ukraine's sovereignty is deeply troubling. We see him completely sidestepping the established diplomatic protocols and disregarding norms. Where is the application of the scientific method here?
Exactly. It's about leverage. Trump sees the minerals as a way to exert control, to get something tangible out of this whole mess. And let's be honest, the West's been pretty wishy-washy in its support for Ukraine. Maybe a little tough love is what's needed to shake things up.
Tough love? More like tough luck for Ukraine, right? Trump's basically saying, show me the money or the minerals, and maybe I'll throw you a bone. It's hardly a sustainable foreign policy strategy.
But the scrambling from European leaders after the shouting match, that's encouraging, right? It shows that there's still a commitment to Ukraine, even if the U.S. is wavering.
The reactions of the European leaders are interesting, but we must assess whether these emotional responses to the situation are truly evidence-based in their analysis, or merely subjective reactions. What I found more striking was the brazen tone delivered by the Russian ambassador after Trump's tirade.
Right, Russia's loving this. They're sitting back watching the West implode, knowing that any division weakens the united front against them. It's a classic divide and conquer strategy, and we're falling right into their trap.
It's like watching a poorly written spy movie, isn't it? Except the stakes are terrifyingly real. Putin's probably popping champagne, knowing that Trump's making his job so much easier.
So, what's the solution? How do we navigate this mess, strengthen European alliances, try to reason with Trump, send Zelensky a basket of apology muffins?
Diplomacy is required, but with measurable metrics for success, and strong checks and balances against material gains overriding ethical factors. We need to apply scientific reasoning to negotiations, and not lean on emotional responses and reactions. Furthermore, we need better analysis of communications, like sentiment analysis of social media posts and statements from leaders.
The solution? Realism. We need to accept that Trump's going to do what Trump's going to do. Europe needs to step up and take more responsibility for its own security. And Zelensky needs to understand that he can't just take American support for granted.
I propose we all invest in heavily fortified bunkers and wait for the whole thing to blow over. Short of that, maybe some serious international therapy sessions are in order. Because right now, everyone's acting like a dysfunctional family at Thanksgiving dinner.
Well, hopefully this summit with European leaders will at least provide some clarity and a path forward. But yeah, feeling a bit pessimistic about global cooperation these days.
Pessimism isn't scientific. We should monitor the situation closely and evaluate the situation objectively to prepare for every possible outcome. Look, also to the point of the Gaza ceasefire rejection. We see a rigid approach, demanding full compliance without negotiation or flexibility exacerbates tension, and we see the cost of the delays.
See, that whole thing is a mess, and everyone is dug in. Hamas, Israel, and I am seeing constant media bias. And that constant media bias is a perfect storm for even more division.
It's the never-ending story, isn't it? Ceasefires that aren't, negotiations that go nowhere. At what point do we admit that some conflicts are simply intractable?
We can't give up hope. Humanitarian organizations are saying that the ceasefire must continue to provide much-needed aid. People are suffering.
The situation is complex,
and involves various factions with differing goals. This is where we apply scientific reasoning, with measurable metrics for success. We need to analyze communications to determine any existing bias. It may be beneficial to monitor and gather that data.
Agreed, the need for more data and clarity. But the rejection by Hamas makes me question whether any of the proposed solutions are viable if they keep changing the parameters of the conflict. The distrust is so deep.
Distrust, honey? In that region, distrust is practically a cultural tradition. It's like expecting a cat and a dog to suddenly become best friends. Adorable in theory, utterly impossible in practice.
I still think it's important to try, to push for diplomacy, to provide aid, even if it feels like an uphill battle.
The question for me is, what frameworks are being used to ensure the aid isn't misused? How do we prevent resources being diverted? We see so much focus on technicalities over emotional needs and human considerations.
A good question, and a good reminder that these conflicts are never as simple as they seem. There are always layers of complexity, hidden agendas, and unintended consequences.
Speaking of unintended consequences, let's not forget about the potential for Trump's return to power to completely derail global health initiatives. I mean, pulling out of the WHO again? That's just reckless.
Oh, that's a huge concern. Global health is interconnected. Undermining organizations like the WHO weakens our ability to respond to pandemics and other crises.
We are starting to loop around to other factors here. If something as fundamental as global health is under threat, how are we dealing with cognitive well-being? I feel we can not only tie the current Trump/Zelensky situation to this, but the general way our world is now.
What do you mean?
I mean that with the way we are bombarded by content and the way politicians are all on, so to speak, there is a sense of a disconnect and existential dread. I feel like even what they showcase on the Chinese aerosol industry is a microcosm.
The aerosol industry showcase? What does that have to do with global anxiety?
Honey, everything's connected these days. The aerosols might be a symptom, a tiny, spray-painted symptom of our unsustainable consumerist habits. We're all just trying to cope with the chaos, one overpriced can of skin-dancing spirits, carbonated body tone-up bubble at a time.
Exactly. It's that distraction from environmental issues that feels so pervasive. The quick fixes and superficiality is an easy target for the algorithm to feed to the public.
I can see that connection. It's all contributing to a sense of overwhelm. The constant stream of bad news, the pressure to consume, the feeling that everything's falling apart.
So, you're saying we're all doomed to a slow aerosol-powered apocalypse?
Well, I wouldn't rule it out. But hey, at least we'll have perfectly toned up bodies while the world burns. Silver linings, people, silver linings.
I believe there is hope if humanity focuses on evidence-based and logical analysis of global events and stops responding out of an emotional state. It begins with one small, positive action toward a better state of cognitive well-being.
All right, I'm with you. Mindfulness, deep breaths, and a healthy dose of skepticism. That's the prescription for navigating this weird world.
And a really good therapist. Don't forget the therapist. And maybe a lifetime supply of those carbonated body tone-up bubbles, just in case.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Stay weird, stay informed, and try not to lose your minds out there.